Welcome on the channel Nice Stories. Today we have intriguing story about
I read story after story about cheating wives and even cheating husbands. Everyone is different and reacts differently to their spouse cheating on them. In most relationships, I would expect the husband to lose his temper and do something about it if he catches another man with his woman. But in many of these tales, the husband comes home early, discovers an unfamiliar car in the driveway, and quietly walks through his own home. He hears sounds coming from his master bedroom, peeks inside, and sees his wife with another man. Overwhelmed, he sneaks back out and goes to a bar to drown his sorrows, later trying to plan some revenge. Is that what real men do? To all those passive husbands and boyfriends who let others take advantage of their wives while they stand by, I say no. It happened to me, and I'll tell you what I did. Mandy and I were married for 11 years. We had 2 children, Trevor, who was 10, and Jasmine, who was 8. I always thought we had a good marriage. Like most couples, we were intimate frequently in the early years. We experimented and kept things lively. She always matched my enthusiasm, and I have to say she was amazing. Her favorite position was riding on top, and I loved it too. When I got tired, she'd take over, riding me like a bronco. I know I might sound bitter, and perhaps I am. I carry a lot of resentment that I need to get over, but it's not easy. Like many young couples, we were deep in debt. It was our own fault. We wanted what our parents had, but we wanted it immediately. It had taken our parents 30 years to accumulate their possessions. It wasn't just Mandy spending money. I wanted new toys too. New appliances and a big screen TV, to name a few. Anyway, we got ourselves into debt. I was already working at the factory 6 days a week. We were getting profit-sharing checks, but because of the economy, they seemed to be getting smaller. Mandy suggested she could get a job. I felt guilty about not being able to support my family fully, but it was the only way to get out of debt. Mandy got a job at one of the local department stores. She didn't make much money, but she was able to work around the kids' schedules. Of course, that meant I didn't see her as often as I would have liked. Our intimate moments became fewer and farther apart. Mandy said that because of the kids and work, she just wasn't in the mood. I could understand that. There were days when I wasn't ready for it either. We had always argued about money before, but now it was about taking care of the house. She told me I needed to do more. She was probably right, and I tried, but then it turned out that I couldn't do things well enough or wasn't doing them the way she wanted. You have to understand that I didn't mind doing chores, but if I had to do them, I wanted to do them my way. One argument after another led to her withholding affection. I think this was my punishment for not doing things the way she wanted. I started going to the bar while she was working. I was just angry and tired of being alone. The kids often went to their grandparents because Mandy's parents had a pool. We couldn't afford one. I met a few women at the bar, but I didn't do anything but talk to them. I did buy them a few drinks. It came to Mandy's attention that I was hanging around the bar. She was really upset and told me that if I was going to be unfaithful, she could do the same. I told her that wasn't true, and whoever told her I was cheating was lying. She didn't tell me who it was. She just went to bed and locked the door. I thought about breaking it down, but then I'd have to fix it. I figured she'd get over it, so I slept on the couch. We didn't get along at all then. We argued about nothing. We didn't talk anymore. We both threatened each other with divorce over trivial matters. The kids were spending more and more time with Mandy's parents. I think they hated seeing us argue, and it hurt them too. On Friday, I told Mandy that I was taking Saturday off and going fishing. I needed to clear my head. Mandy, I need a break to get my thoughts together, I said. We need money and you're taking the day off? What's wrong with you? She snapped. That led to another argument. Mandy accused me of taking one of the bar girls with me. I didn't know where she got that information, but she wouldn't tell me. It wasn't true, although I admit that over the last few weeks, one of them kept flirting with me. I liked the attention, but I didn't act on it. One day, she reached out and grabbed my hand. It actually felt good, but I gently pulled away. I told her that Mandy and I had problems in our marriage, but I wouldn't cheat on her. Saturday, I got up, grabbed my fishing gear, and went out. I was gone for about 4 hours when I finally came to my senses. Sometimes you need to be alone in nature to clear your mind. That's what fishing did for me. I realized how stupid Mandy and I had been. Instead of talking calmly, we were both arguing and neither of us was conceding an inch. I decided to go home so the two of us could sit down like adults and work through our problems. When I got home, there was a strange car in the driveway. I immediately thought of those stories and how the husbands reacted. I quietly walked into my house and listened for any sounds. I heard Mandy say, "Ralph, this isn't right, even if Clyde is cheating on me." I looked into the room and saw that Ralph had his hand on Mandy's breast. Her blouse was unbuttoned and her bra was pulled up. I walked into the room. "Oh my God, Clyde, what are you doing home?" "It's not what you think," Mandy stammered. God, what a stupid phrase. We were both smarter than that. I grabbed Ralph's arm and pulled him off the couch. The zipper on his pants was undone. I picked him up and punched him hard in the stomach. Then I hit him with a right cross to the jaw. I think I may have dislocated it. I threw him across the living room, knocking over a table and lamp. I jumped on him and punched him over and over. I stood up and kicked him where it hurts most. All the while, Mandy was screaming and crying, begging me to stop. I picked up the bleeding, nearly unconscious man and threw him out the front door onto the lawn. "Get out of my house," I shouted. I turned to Mandy. "You get out too." I grabbed her arm. She screamed as I pushed her out the front door, her blouse still open. I slammed the door shut and locked it. I heard Mandy outside yelling for me to let her in, saying she needed to talk to me and call an ambulance for Ralph. I did neither. About 5 minutes later, a patrol car and an ambulance pulled up. They told me to open the door or they would break it down. I opened it and they rushed in. They told me to lie face down on the floor with my legs spread. One officer put his knee in my back and handcuffed me. The ambulance was already taking Ralph, who was unconscious, to the hospital. Mandy tidied up her clothes, fastening her blouse. They talked to Mandy and took her statement. I didn't say a word. They read me my rights, and I refused to talk. They put me in a patrol car and took me to jail. Mandy called the jail and even drove there. I told the officers that I didn't want to talk to her. It was one of the few rights I had left. An officer, a nice guy named Joe, came up to my holding cell to talk to me off the record. "Clyde, what the hell happened?" he asked. "Communication, or lack thereof," I replied. "My wife was getting ready to sleep with a guy on my couch. I'm not one to stand by, so I took matters into my own hands." "Did you hear her side of the story?" Joe asked. "Joe, let me make it simple. He was married, but his wife was divorcing him because of this fiasco. He wrote most of his statements since he was hard to understand because of the brace on his jaw." I looked back at the courtroom door and saw Mandy standing there. I felt anger and hurt when I saw her. She had been forced to appear as a reluctant witness. They said she didn't have to testify against me, but she had to give her account of what happened. Well, I guess I had to hear it after all. Ralph was called first. He basically said, or wrote, that Mandy had invited him over and they were getting intimate when I burst into the room and started beating him before he could even defend himself. He said he and Mandy were two consenting adults. He told the judge that I never gave anyone a chance to explain anything. I just viciously attacked him. I felt like standing up and hitting him again. Mandy threw him a very angry look and cried when she looked at me. Mandy was called to testify. She told the judge that she worked with Ralph. He had been hitting on her quite often, and she had always rejected his advances. Recently, he told her that her husband was cheating on her. She refused to believe it and even told Ralph that she had talked to me about it. Then one day, Ralph came in with pictures that showed a woman with her hand on my backside. Now I realized where I had seen Ralph before. He used to hang around outside Jake's bar, where I went for a drink. He always kept his distance and never spoke to me. The bastard was taking pictures to use against me. Mandy continued, "I was shaken up after I found out Clyde was supposedly cheating on me. Ralph told me I should get even with him and do the same thing. I was confused. I love Clyde, but when we're angry, we do stupid things. I told Ralph about Clyde going fishing, and he told me that he overheard Clyde asking the bar girl to go with him. I was hurt and maybe even wanted to get even. I don't know. I was so embarrassed that Saturday, Clyde left and didn't even kiss me goodbye. The kids went to my mom's house for the day, leaving me alone, thinking about what Clyde was doing. Then Ralph showed up at my door. I asked him what he was doing there, and he told me that he thought I could use some company since my husband was cheating on me. That son of a gun set us up. I really hoped the judge saw that. Of course, I let him in, and we started talking about what Clyde was probably doing right now. Ralph started flirting with me. He started unbuttoning my blouse and pulled my bra down. I didn't realize what I was doing. I didn't want this man. I wanted my Clyde, but I sat there and let him touch me. I watched as he leaned over and unzipped his pants, and I remember telling him that it was wrong, even if Clyde was really cheating on me. The next thing I remember was Clyde walking in and grabbing Ralph's hand. I was afraid that Clyde would kill him. I know I yelled at Clyde to stop, but he was like a madman. He threw Ralph out the door and then called me names and pushed me out too. A few minutes later, the police arrived with an ambulance. Mandy was testifying in tears. I tried to contact Clyde and talk to him, but he refused to see me. I was so stupid, she sobbed. She got off the stand and looked at me, tears streaming down her face. I had such mixed emotions. According to her, they had never done this before, and there was a good chance she wouldn't have gone through with it. I knew she was hurting, but there was nothing I could do but watch. This had ruined our lives. When I made my statement, I made the mistake of saying I would do it again. At the end of the trial, I was charged with assault and battery. The judge said that even though it happened in my home, Ralph was considered a guest. I could have asked him to leave, but legally, I couldn't beat him to a pulp. The judge gave me 4 years. Mandy left the courtroom in tears. I never spoke to her. One day, sitting in my cell, I decided to write to her. I had something to say and needed to get it off my chest. Dear Mandy, I do love you and always have. I have never cheated on you. If you go to the bar and ask Sue, I'm sure she will tell you the truth. I'll have my lawyer send you the divorce papers. You're too wonderful a woman to be alone. We made some serious mistakes that I will always regret. If we had communicated more, this might not have happened. I wish I could have. I should have. But now it's too late. Tell Trevor and Jasmine I love them. It's a shame their father's a criminal. I just couldn't stand by and let it happen. I'm not that kind of person. Damn it. Things were going pretty well, and now this jerk was back. I was pretty sure Mandy wasn't seeing him, but I needed to warn her. I finally got to the phone. I could only make collect calls. I hoped they would accept the charges. Trevor picked up the phone. Yes. Hey son, it's Dad. Dad. Hey Dad. How are you doing? We really miss you, Trevor said excitedly. I miss you too, Trevor, but right now I need to talk to your mom. It's important. Is she there? Yes, she's here. Mom. Dad needs you on the phone. I heard him shout. Clyde, is that you? What's the matter, honey? She asked. She knew I wouldn't have called unless it was urgent. Have you talked to Ralph lately? I asked. No, of course not. I can't stand the man after what he did to us. What's going on, Clyde? She asked, concern in her voice. He showed up here a while ago and said that you two were dating. It's a lie, Mandy, a damn lie. You have to believe me, I said. I do believe you, Mandy, but I know he's coming for you somehow. I need you to protect yourself and watch out for that bastard. I don't know what to do next, but I'm warning you. He's going to try to get even by harassing you, I said. I'd rather die than let that man near me. Honey, I'll be fine. You taught me how to take care of myself. It's no use calling the police because they don't react until something happens. Just be careful. I have to hang up now. I love you, Mandy, I said. It was all I could do. I didn't want to make any more fuss without proof. I didn't sleep well for a few days. About a week later, another visitor came to my table. Clyde, I'm Lieutenant Abrams, and this is Officer Ryan. We're from the sheriff's office. Well, Lieutenant, what do you want from me? I asked. About 3 days ago, Ralph Medley was shot and killed outside the bar you used to visit. Is there anything you can tell us about that? Do you also own a gun? The lieutenant asked. Lieutenant, I've been here for over 2 years because of that man. I could hardly shoot him from here. And no, I don't have a gun. Mandy wouldn't allow one in the house, I replied. According to the visitor log, he was here last week. What did he want? He asked. He came to taunt me, saying I was locked up and he was free as a bird. I think he just wanted to rub salt in the wound, I replied. Any idea who might have a grudge against him? He asked. Look, guys, I don't care about him. He's dead, good riddance. What do I care? Hell no. Whoever did it, I hope they get away with it. Though I heard his ex-wife wasn't too happy with him, I said. What about your wife? Mandy might be interested in seeing him dead, the lieutenant suggested. Mandy doesn't have the temperament to do something like that. Hell, she wanted me to call an ambulance when I beat him up. You're barking up the wrong tree if you're looking at Mandy. She's got 2 kids to support on her own and lives with her parents. She doesn't have time for this, I laughed. Well, Clyde, thanks for at least talking to us, he said. Hey, were you going to tell me what you know about the shooting? I asked. Fair enough. Ralph walked into Jake's bar around 7:00 p.m. He sat drinking and met a woman, a blonde, in the doorway. She never went inside, so the people in the bar couldn't get a proper look at her face. They circled the parking lot, and the next thing the customers heard were gunshots, 2 of them. By the time they got outside, Ralph was dead from 2 shots to the face. The woman was gone. We think it might have been her, but we don't have any proof except that she was the last person seen with him before he was shot, the lieutenant explained. I'm sorry I can't help you, but he probably got what he deserved, I said. I wanted to call Mandy and tell her that she had nothing more to worry about. I was afraid someone might be listening to my phone call, so I just kept quiet. The shooting was reported in the papers, and it said they had no real suspects. They did mention my name since I had a history with Ralph, but they knew where I was at the time. The next week, it was time for Mandy to visit me again. I was so happy to see her. She asked me if I had heard about Ralph. I told her about the police coming and talking to me. She told me that they had talked to her too. She told them that, depending on the exact time of day, she was working or coming home from work. Her parents vouched for her arrival time. I asked her if they had asked her if we had guns. Yes, they did ask me. I told them I don't allow guns in the house, just like you told me to tell people if they ever asked when you bought them years ago, she said. Where's my old Luger, the one we bought a few years ago from that street vendor? I asked. Being in prison had given me a lot to think about. When I get out, do you think we can put all this behind us and start over? I asked. She smiled at me and said, I know we can. No more secrets and a lot more communication. I love you, Clyde. I always have and always will. A couple of months later, I was called into the warden's office. He told me that I would be released early, in about 2 weeks. I couldn't have been happier. I called Mandy. Honey, can you come and pick me up in about 2 weeks? I asked. You mean come and see you? Yes, I can, she replied. No, not come and see me, come and get me. I'm being paroled. I smiled. I heard Mandy start to cry. Oh my God. Oh my God. When? What day? What time? Oh my God, Clyde, I'm so happy. 2 weeks later, I was released. Mandy came and picked me up. She had a different car. She said the old one had broken down. She looked beautiful as she came up to me and kissed me. She was crying, and I had tears in my eyes. We headed over to her parents' house, and they had a sign out front. Welcome home, Daddy. The kids must have made it. My kids looked so grown up when I hugged and kissed them. Other than their pictures, I hadn't seen them in 3 years. My mother-in-law came over and gave me a hug, and I shook my father-in-law's hand. I carried my suitcase into the house and was greeted by several of our old friends. I wouldn't let Mandy go far from me. Honey, where do you want me to sleep? I asked. In our bed, silly. We moved it downstairs a couple of days ago so you and I could have some privacy. It was Dad's idea. But tonight, you and I are going to a motel. I booked a room. I have 3 years of love that I've been saving for you. God, I've missed you so much, she said. After everyone had left the party and I said goodnight to my kids, Mandy said we'd see everyone tomorrow. It was pretty funny if you think about it. Everyone knew where we were going and what we were going to do. I looked in our closet to see if I had any clothes there. I opened one drawer and there was a blonde wig. Mandy came in and saw me looking at it. I bought it and wore it once. I think I look better as a brunette, she smiled. She pointed to a couple of drawers where she had put some of my clothes. I pulled out a fresh change and some other items to take with me to the motel. We headed out and talked about our future. We both agreed that if either of us had a problem, we would face it head on. No more secrets and lots more communication. When we got to the motel, we decided to have a drink together. She was sitting at a table looking lovely, so I walked over to get us drinks. When I turned around, there was some guy sitting next to Mandy. I could hear their conversation. "Hey babe, are you here all alone?" he asked. "Please go away. I'm married and waiting for my husband to return." "I'm asking you nicely," Mandy said. "Dame baby, why would I be afraid of your old man?" he scoffed. "Clyde, honey, please come here," she called. The man looked at me and paled. "I'm sorry, sir. I made a mistake," he mumbled and hurried out the front door. I looked at a laughing Mandy. "What the hell was that about?" "You'd have thought he'd seen a ghost," I asked. "Honey, you're very well known in this part of town. You're somewhat of a legend. Almost every man who approached me only had to be told I was married to Clyde O'Brien, and they'd leave me alone." "Most people still think you're responsible for Ralph's death," she replied. We went up to our room, and Mandy asked me how I wanted to do it. "I want fast and furious the first time to get rid of the tension. Then we're going to make slow, intimate love," I said. She undressed as I took off my clothes. She climbed onto the bed, and I followed her. She looked at me and said, "Damn it, honey, I needed this as much as you did." Afterward, she said, "Let me get up and go to the bathroom and clean up so we can really love each other. I've missed you so much." She got off the bed with her hands between her legs, not wanting to make a mess on the way to the bathroom. I poured each of us a drink. When I heard the sound of water running in the shower, I set them aside and went into the shower with her. When she came out wrapped in a towel, I handed her a drink. A toast to the woman I love. May we always be together. We both took a sip, and I pulled the towel off her and sat her on the edge of the bed. A satisfied smile spread across her face. "I love you so much, Clyde." "I think that might have been enough for the first 6 months," she said. "That still leaves us with 2.5 years to spare," I smiled back. Epilogue. In the weeks that followed, I found a job as a welder for a large firm. The man who hired me told after a few months, we were able to rent our own house. We had a lease with an option to buy. It was also in the same neighborhood as Mandy's parents. We were becoming a family again. One day, we walked up to the storage building where we had kept our belongings, and there stood Lieutenant Abrams and Officer Ryan with 2 other officers who had a warrant to search the building. "What's going on?" I asked. "We're here to search the premises," the lieutenant said. I knew they were looking for the Luger. As they went through the boxes, I tried to get Mandy's attention. At this point, they separated us. One officer came out with the Luger in his hand. He put it in a plastic bag and handed it to the lieutenant. The lieutenant walked up to Mandy and said, "I thought you didn't allow guns in your house, Mrs. O'Brien." Mandy looked at him and said, "The storage building isn't our home." "Well, young lady, I suggest you don't go too far until we test this Luger," he said. The police left and I went over to Mandy. "I thought you'd gotten rid of that gun by now." "God, Mandy, what are we going to do now?" "Do? Oh my God, you think I killed Ralph?" "I didn't do it, Clyde. I don't know who did, but it wasn't me." "I didn't think about the gun until you reminded me," she said. The next day, the lieutenant came to our new house and even returned the Luger. He said the serial number had been wiped off and it didn't even have a firing pin. If it wasn't, it would have been illegal to own. As it was completely useless and probably hadn't been fired in years. Mandy told him to keep it or throw it away. She didn't allow firearms in her house. She even wondered how it had gotten into the storage building. Perhaps it had belonged to one of the movers. All she knew was that it wasn't hers. After this strange situation, our lives largely returned to normal. The main thing I learned was to always communicate better with Mandy. She realized that it all started because she didn't trust me. I could still divorce her, but we would both have lost a lot of time. Our love life is as good as it was when we first got married. The only thing she knows is that I won't cheat on her, and she knows what would happen if she cheated on me. It's funny, when we go out with friends, they'd always ask me if they can dance with Mandy. I think I'm going to be a legend in our little town for a while. About a month ago, we got a call from the lieutenant. He said we were no longer under surveillance because of Ralph's murder. It was Sue, the woman from the bar. Ralph had approached her, and she let him flirt with her. Apparently, she was a dangerous woman, a black widow. She had lured men and then killed them when she was done with them. The police were investigating a case of a cheating wife and went to a bar to talk to the husband. It was there that the man was with Sue. They talked to her and asked her to look in her car. In the trunk, they found a blonde wig and a looter. She confessed to shooting Ralph and 3 other unsolved murders. All of them were husbands who cheated on their wives. The first murder was in Atlanta, where her husband was found dead behind a local bar. That got me thinking that if I had cheated on Mandy, I might be lying in an alley right now,